Awesome. My screen's not working. Hold on. Let's see what that does. Hey, okay. Fabio, can you unmute on your end? Because it's not letting me unmute you.
Sure.
Yeah,
Here
awesome.
I am.
Okay. All the tech fails today. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Learning Space. I am your host with the Broken Lower Third, Nicole Gallucci, postdoc with CosmoQuest at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. My co-host, Georgia, is still on vacation. I hope you're enjoying the mountains, Georgia. We miss you. I have with me our guest today, Fabio Del Sordo. So, hello.
Hello.
So as usual, you guys watching can use the Q&A app to leave us comments and questions. You may notice I've put the Showcase app back on as well. Turns out there's a way to toggle between Showcase, where I can show you the links about what we're talking about, and the Q&A, the comments and questions. So if you check the comment stream on either event page, CosmoQuest's or mine, I've added a screenshot that points to the little button you need to use. This way, I don't know, backwards, whatever. It's here. It looks like a Rubik's Cube. You click that, you can switch between Showcase, one of the newer Google Plus little app thingies where we have links to what we're talking about, and the Q&A app. So if you're watching with the Q&A open, use that little Rubik's Cube to go back and forth. So we've already got a hello from a bunch of people, from Guido in Germany, from Nancy Graziano, and from Helg. I'm probably pronouncing your name improperly, so let me know how to correct that. So thank you guys for saying hi in the comments, and welcome to the show. So today we are talking about a very cool project called Galileo Mobile. Um, do you want to just give us a brief overview, Fabio, of what is Galileo Mobile?
Sure. Well, first of all, I introduce myself.
Yes.
I'm an astrophysicist. I just started a new job at Yale University 10 days ago.
Well, yes.
Yeah,
Welcome to your new office.
thanks. And I'm a co-founder of this Galileo Mobile project, which I will try to explain to the audience today. So it is a project that started in actually 2008, and but it became active in 2009. That was International Year of Astronomy. And the main focus of the project is to use astronomy as a framework to share the idea of critical thinking and to do a cultural exchange with places, villages, and countries in which outreach programs of astronomy are not that common. So I think that what best introduced our program is our motto, that is under the same sky. Means that we want to share astronomy or culture or ideas with people all around the world.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like there were a lot of projects that started around that era, 2009, when the International Year of Astronomy happened, that have a global perspective on astronomy and that whole concept of we share that sky, which is awesome. So what encouraged you? What inspired you to start this program?
Well, yeah, this program was started actually after an idea of one of our co-founder, which is Phil. He had this idea of doing some outreach and connected with an expedition, and then he managed to spread this idea, and he found a bunch of people who were actually willing to do that. Personally, first speak just for myself, and well, it was the idea of traveling and of doing this using astronomy as a reason for traveling. And moreover, the idea was to travel to South America in 2009, which is a continent that I did never visit by that time. And actually, it was a continent that has always attracted me since I was very little. So it was a kind of weird coincidence that all of a sudden, when I was about to start my PhD in astronomy, uh, this opportunity showed up, and so I had no doubt in that I should have been part of that. And I think that something similar happened also for all the other members. Many of them realized that this idea was quite cool, and so the idea was to turn this dream into reality and make it real.
So where were you doing your PhD at the time when this started?
So when this started, I was between my master and my PhD. I did my master in Italy, in Pisa, and my PhD in Stockholm, in Sweden. We had our first meeting in late fall 2008. I started my PhD at the beginning of 2009.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where was the first expedition?
So, well, first of all, I'd say that many of the people at the beginning were based in Munich, in Germany. Apart for myself, I was in Stockholm, and then one of the members, Phil, was in Göttingen, in Germany. Then the first expedition took place in the fall 2009, and we went to the Andes, the mountains on the Altiplano, between a region that is shared between Bolivia, Peru, and Chile. And this was just perfect for several reasons. One of which is that we managed to visit 3 countries using basically one language, that is Spanish. Although we also visited communities where people do not really speak Spanish, because somewhere there they still speak their native languages. And yes, on the map we can see some of the places that we visited. And we visited also places like in Peru, where we couldn't speak Spanish with them, so we had to ask help to local people to translate our Spanish to Quechua. And so this region is quite interesting because it's geographically speaking, it's one region, but it's shared between 3 countries, and also because they have a strong astronomical heritage. So they have a big heritage in ancient astronomy. So the Incas culture of astronomy and also Tiwanaku culture of astronomy there are quite strong. And in fact, they have other constellations with respect of the Western constellations. I could also speak a bit more about that if you want. So yeah, and moreover, in that region the sky is really great. So it's quite natural for people to look at the sky and to just feel connected a lot with stars and constellations.
Yeah, we have a question from Elad Avran asking, is the sky very different in the Southern Hemisphere? Can you explain what the Southern Hemisphere sky is like for someone who lives in the Northern Hemisphere?
Sure. Well, yeah, it is different from the sky in the Northern Hemisphere for several reasons. One of which is that you actually see different stars. It depends on where you are in the Southern Hemisphere. But for instance, one of the reference stars in the Northern Hemisphere is the polar star, and you cannot see it in the Southern Hemisphere. So on the other hand, you can see, for instance, the Magellanic Clouds that are the galaxies that are closest to the Milky Way, to our galaxy. And moreover, if you see the same constellation appears in the sky in a different way. So it's most of the time upside down. And in fact, it's quite difficult if you go there for the first time to understand which constellation and which star you're looking at.
Yeah, that I know quite well. See if I can get a decent image up. So although we started off saying we all live under the same sky, there is the same sky around the entire Earth, but which part of it you see depends on your latitude. So I'll try and share this really quickly. That celestial sphere. Whoopsie. Try that again. Okay. So like you're saying, if you imagine all the stars on a sphere, which they're not, but we'll just go with this for illustration's sake, the North Celestial Pole, so all these continents in the northern hemisphere can easily see this star, which is the North Star. But you can't see that from where you were in the southern hemisphere necessarily. You see the constellations that are down here. And yeah, it is totally disorienting especially if you're someone who's gotten to know the night sky fairly well where you live. Because you look up and you don't know what's going on. What was it like learning the new constellations and learning all of that?
Well, it was so speaking about southern sky constellations.
Yeah.
It was nice to finally see them, at least for me, because it was the first time I went in the other hemisphere, and so I could actually for the first time see constellation that I just read about before. But on the other hand, there are constellations in the Inca culture, and these constellations are, of course, based on figures that are common in their cultures, that in their region. Like for instance, there is Llama constellation, and of course, I mean this is related with animals and facts that they have in their own region. So. Another interesting point is that many of the constellations they have are based on actually dark regions in the sky. So while we tend to make like drawings in the sky, just connecting stars, they tend to identify dark regions and see these dark regions as drawings themselves.
Right, because the Milky Way is so prominent because you can see the galactic center better.
Yeah, absolutely. The Milky Way is very prominent, and this is also disorienting because sometimes the sky is so clear that you see so many stars. Actually, you can. There is kind of, I mean, the sky is really luminous, even if there is no moon, and you can use the light coming from the stars and from the Milky Way to just take a look around you. It's really impressive.
So these are areas that don't have much light pollution. So that the towns and the places you visited, what were they like? What were the people like? What was the infrastructure like? What was that like?
So we visited very different regions, very different towns. So I was traveling for the most of the time, but not for the whole time. And personally, I visited. Like the first community I visited, it's a community on a little island in the middle of Titicaca Lake. It is called the Isla del Sol, Island of the Sun.
Yeah.
And this was a quite touching moment, also because we were connected with a local shaman. So it's like a magician who made this ritual of asking permission to observe the sky and to without, say, hurting the local gods. So we went from something like this to something like a bit different, like in Cusco, for instance. Cusco is a quite famous city in Peru, and we went to schools there, and well, this city is much more, say, close to what we can imagine. Of course, Peru is still very different from here in the United States or Europe, but nevertheless, it's quite touristic, Cusco. So we felt more or less at ease easily. In Chile, we visited regions that are in the desert, in Atacama Desert, and here once again. We are totally different landscape. In terms of infrastructures, our project is mainly concentrated on visiting schools and interaction with students and teachers. So at that time we were there mainly for doing activities with students, but we also managed to participate and to make a 2 days workshop for teachers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and actually this was the first workshop for teachers we we did in our history. But then we realized that this is kind of central point in our action. So in following expeditions, we concentrated also on teacher workshops. And we went to many schools which had no telescope, which had no, some of the schools had some computers, but they were mainly absolutely not equipped for doing anything related with astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we realized that sometimes, so by that time we visited the school just 1 day per school. But if you go to schools like this, where they don't have any equipment, any previous knowledge about astronomy, then you maybe need to spend more time there to really leave some imprint on people, on kids, and also on teachers. Yes, I don't know if I really answered to your question, but it's quite.
No, that's good. It's giving us a sense of what it's like. Yeah. We have a great comment and question from Guido Bibra in Germany. So he likens Galileo Mobile to missionary work instead of you're spreading astronomy. Have you ever encountered any resistance to learning astronomy from the students or the people you visited? Or were they all kind of welcoming?
So, yeah, I see that you also mentioned religion in the question. Well, resistance, I will not say. Resistance, I will not say, because astronomy is something that at the first glance amazed basically everybody. So it's something, it's a particular science, because the laboratory is available for everybody. It's a sky, at least at the first glance. And I mean, it's very easy for your attention to be catched by astronomy. So in this sense, it's very lucky science. So there was no resistance. But of course, many times we were in some way contrast with what they knew, the previous knowledge that mainly came from religion. So for instance, there were questions about the origin of the universe, Big Bang. And when you have to speak about this, of course, you have to speak about the history of time, the history of the universe, and local, actual theories, and they're in conflict with religion. So many of the students sometimes were a bit confused, I have to say, and we needed to give further explanations. First explanation that we said is that actually they have to consider the two kinds of knowledge in a separate way. I mean, religion is something that tend to give the meaning to what you do, and while science tend to explain what we can say, what we can demonstrate about the universe, about not only stars but also about things on our planet. Well, it's a quite delicate topic, but in the end, especially in our last trip, that was one of the last trips, was in 2013, last year, to Uganda. Well, there were many questions about this, and I can anticipate that in our documentary that will be soon released about this trip, there will be also a section dedicated to this topic.
Yeah, I discovered a couple months ago, I mean, you don't have to go far to run into that question of understanding the world through religion or through science, because I did a summer camp just the next town over, and I had students asking me questions about that. They're like, wait. You said the universe is 13 billion years old? What?
Yeah.
And yeah, so so we talked a bit about, and like you said, it's a delicate subject, because you don't want to scare them off of science because it conflicts with the pre-existing world.
Yeah, I mean, and especially, I mean, if you teach about astronomy in, say, United States, okay, you can be quite direct, but if you travel somewhere else in the world, I mean, you just show up there, and you don't want to step over their knowledge and their beliefs. You just don't want to be conquistador.
Right.
I mean, our goal is to go there and share knowledge, to speak with them, to interact, to manage to have a deep interaction, as deep as possible.
It's outreach, not colonialism. Yeah, I totally understand. I
Exactly.
totally get that. Yeah, I could see where
Yeah.
there'd be an issue. And Nancy Graziano also has a question, also calling it astronomical missionary work. What has surprised you most about doing this work?
Um, in- then I will also comment on missionary work.
Yeah.
Surprise. What surprised me is, let me think. Personally, I think that actually the simple fact that astronomy is a kind of really common language,
Mhm.
at least at the beginning, when you start speaking with people, it's something that catch the attention of many kids all around the world. Yeah, this is something that at the beginning maybe didn't surprise me this much because I mean, I'm interested in astronomy since I was little. But then I realized that okay, this was just for myself. Then it's not trivial that it's for everybody else. And also, people are really excited to receive our visit. They're really excited to feel part of a big community that includes also people in other continents. And so, I mean, maybe they have the vision that they live daily in their little school, but then they see that there are people coming from Europe, United States, or other countries anyway, visiting them, so they feel more important. And yeah, this kind of surprised me. Yes.
Cool.
In terms of missionary work, well, it is true that a basic aspect of Galileo Mobile is that we are all volunteers.
Mhm.
So most of us are in astronomy or in astrophysics. Not all of us. Some others are educators or journalists because our project is quite complex and we also need skills in other fields.
Yeah.
It is volunteer, uh, but I also feel that every time we are engaged in organizing an expedition and also in traveling, we actually gain a lot ourselves. So it's something that managed to make us grow a lot personally and both personally and as a team. So yeah, missionary if you want to call it like this, but we also feel rich in doing that.
What have you gotten most out of doing these expeditions?
Well, from the expedition, I surely feel that I improved the ability to interact with other people, to be flexible, and to adapt myself to have different people just to speak with from the expedition. From working in the team, well, you have to develop a lot of skills like organizing meetings or in so teamwork. You also have to be able to interact with other people in the team, other team members, and this is something that is not trivial. I think that each of the Galileo Mobile members grew up a lot
Cool.
in this sense. Yes,
So
I see
you
that.
think, hmm?
I see that there was a question. Have you been at Paranal? Yes, we've been there in our first. We've been in Paranal during our first travel to
Okay.
South America. It was an interesting visit. It was by the end of the travel. We managed to be in contact with people working in Paranal. Also because ESO was one of the institutions which supported us. And yeah, we paid a visit there, and it's an amazing place.
So that's where the VLT, the Very Large Telescope, is located. It's that question
Yes.
from Peter. Um, yeah, I've noticed it at least for the ones around South America. You mentioned the Atacama as well. There are several telescopes in the Atacama right now.
Yeah.
Were you able to bring the fact that there were local major observatories to excite the students?
Yeah, this was important, especially in Chile.
Hmm.
Um, of course, Chile feels very strongly the presence of these big observatories,
Yep.
and yeah, so the students were also understood that we were connected with these telescopes. Originally, we went there to visit Paranal, also because we have filmed a documentary It's available online on our website. It's called Under the Same Sky. Well, actually, the original title is in Spanish, Bajo el Mismo Cielo. And so the idea was to film something from Paranal to be included in the documentary. Then in the end, this is not the central point of the documentary, but I mean, the scenery there is really amazing.
Cool. So the initial trip happened in 2009, and then there were several expeditions several years later. So what happened in between? Did your organization grow? Did you pull in new partners? What got the ball rolling again in 2012?
So originally the idea was to have just one expedition. So the World Galileo Mobile should have been one expedition, one documentary, and that's it. And of course, it took time to complete the documentary. It took 1 year to get it done, and then other time to get it published online. But then, meanwhile, we realized that well, all of us, or many of us, were so involved, so engaged in the project that we could not just leave it like that. And we had such good feedback from many different sources, both from communities we visited and from also when we went to conferences, for instance, comments to talks about Galileo Mobile. And so we decided to keep it going. And we organized another expedition to India. It was our second expedition in 2012. This was connected with a conference to which many of us went independently for our research. And then we managed to make this 2-week expedition in India around Bangalore. And India is also a very great area to visit for doing astronomy because there are a lot of local astronomers. And so in this sense, when we went there, we realized that if we give the inspiration to do outreach and to bring it on, there are local people who can keep doing that. And this is actually what's happening in India. Because after our expedition in 2012, there have been also follow-up activities, and this is exactly the spirit of what we want to do. We want to inspire local people to keep speaking about astronomy.
So here's your travel map around Bangalore. How long was this? How long did this expedition take?
Well, this was a 2-week expedition,
Okay.
kind of say short expedition, but still it's quite demanding.
Yeah.
I haven't been there. I did not go, but other team members went. Because so while on the first expedition, basically all of us traveled, but one person, Federico, who decided to not to travel, but his work has been basic for all of us. Well, then our team also grew up, and so only some of us managed to travel, both for a time constraint and for a money constraint, because we have to look for funding for traveling.
Right.
And and also we do this in our spare time. It's not our main job.
Right.
So yeah, and then since then we managed to do at least one expedition per year. So in 2012 also there was we call it the pilot expedition to Bolivia in the Amazon region, where one of our team members, Phil, went, and then he set the basis for what has been the expedition of this year, of 2014, that just ended a couple of weeks ago, to Brazil and Bolivia, in the Amazon region. We called it Bravo. So we had 2 expeditions in 2012, one in 2013 that was Uganda, and then one this year that was in Brazil and Bolivia. But that's not all, because meanwhile many of us got inspired, and so they decided to carry on, call them personal initiatives. So for instance, I did travel to Nepal, did some outreach activities there, and also I was involved and invited to participate in a project in Haiti last January, in which also I went to some orphanages to speak about astronomy and to to organize star parties. Yes. And but there have been also other activities in Portugal, in the United States, for special communities. So yeah, so the project kind of grew and took also, some side of the project started showing up, and sides that we could not imagine at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And now there is yet another expedition that is planned for this year, that is in October. A few of us will go to Colombia to visit the areas and surrounding of Bogota. And this will be in collaboration with a planetarium in Bogota, and we will visit 5 schools there.
So Sylvan Westby is asking, how do you initiate an event? Are you contacted by the people there, or do you reach out to to the schools or the authorities in that area? And what kind of support do you get when you're there?
Yeah, this changes from time to time.
Uh-huh.
And from school to school. For instance, the expedition in Uganda, we did not think about going there at the beginning, but we were invited by people there, and by the Café Scientifique, that is an international organization, and OED, that is Organization for Astronomy Development. And yeah, so we decided to accept the invitation and to start collaborating with them. And they have decided the schools we were going to visit.
Okay.
Of course, we put some constraints saying what we could do and what we need, more or less. But yeah, that was their decision. While, for instance, in 2009, we visited 24 schools, if I'm not wrong.
Wow.
And some of these were kind of suggested by our sponsor, especially ISO. Others were chosen by ourselves with the help of local collaborators. Because so we worked in this way. We looked for local people who can collaborate with us and who can give us support, especially in terms of logistics. And so they suggest us schools, and we worked out together with them the list of the schools we want to visit. And something similar happened also in Brazil and Bolivia this year. We had local collaborators, and we decided together with them the schools. Same will happen in Colombia. Again, in Colombia, for instance, we have been invited to go there. We didn't think about going to Colombia. It was quite difficult for us to find funding to go there. Okay. But then in the end, local planetarium Bogota will invite us and will support us at least partially, and so we can go there, and we will visit 5 schools that have been decided by them.
Excellent. So you have collaborators with the schools, local planetariums. ESO you mentioned, so that's the European Southern Observatory, and OAD you mentioned. So those of you who've been watching for a while, we talked to Kevin Govender of the Office of Astronomy for Development, oh my gosh, maybe a month ago, maybe a little more than a month ago, and he just inspires us all to do all the things all over the world. He's really great at that.
Yeah, and OAD supported us in through Café Scientifique in Uganda. Now we hope we can support us also in next years. They are opening for proposals, and every year we submit a proposal. So far we didn't get any funding directly, but we hope sooner or later we will.
Awesome. Yes, keep trying. Yeah, that's a super oversubscribed proposal program.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about some of the activities that you do with students when you're there?
Sure. Well, our format has been more or less the same since the beginning, but at the same time it's been also evolving. So the first activity we do is a kind of an icebreaker. We call it charla inaugural, or anyway, starting talk. And we invite people to our talk, and it's a journey that starts from the school we visit and goes towards the limit of the universe. So we go through the Earth, planets, and then out of the solar system, and so on. And this is just to introduce the concept of distances. Okay. So which distances we are speaking about, and where we are sitting in the universe, and also to introduce some of the celestial objects they can see in the sky. Then after this, we do some session with the teachers, so teacher workshops in which we invite them to especially try to do inquiry-based activities with kids. So not only activities in which kids are taught concepts, but activities in which they can actually learn and discover things. And while doing this, we also introduce some of the hand-on activities we are going to do with kids, and to which we invite teachers to participate. Some of the activities are, well, they go from basic observation with the telescope, both during daytime. So, for instance, sun observations through the method of projection of the sun, and also star parties sometimes when it's possible. Then one very popular activity, for instance, is called the Earth as a peppercorn. So we imagine that the Earth, we imagine that the Earth is the size of a grain of pepper, and then we build solar system in this scale. Actually, you need a quite big courtyard to do that.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Most of the time, you cannot go beyond Jupiter, maybe sometimes.
Yeah, we did that at an elementary school when I was in Virginia, and we took up the entire track that was like the length of the school. It wasn't a peppercorn, but it was about that size. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, for instance, we asked them to build a sundial, just using a pencil and a piece of paper. One activity that we recently developed was to say something about the rotation of the sun, just seeing pictures of the sun and see how sunspots move on the surface. So we give some basic concepts on sunspots, and this in the picture is.
I'm a little bit behind. Here's the sundials.
The sundials, yes. This is the sundials.
This is in Chile. In Chile.
This is in Bolivia, actually.
It's in Bolivia.
This is in Isla del Sol, yes.
Okay.
And I was saying about the shape of the Earth. The rotation of the sun. So some people can, many of them, they cannot really understand at the first glance the distinction between the rotation of the Earth, then the revolution of the Earth around the sun, and then the rotation of the sun. So if we manage to sometimes to just explain this concept, this is already a big achievement. Yeah. And when we understand that they are aware of this concept, we can ask them to measure something about the rotation of the sun. The same about the shape of the Earth orbit around the sun. Many of them think that it's just a circular orbit, but in fact it is not. And so we try to make some experiments with them to understand whether or not it's circular.
Since it's Galileo Mobile, I understand that sometimes there are Galileo Scopes involved. That's another thing we've talked about here on the program. It looks like in this picture here, here we go. You were able to actually explore telescopes with the students.
I think that
there's like a tiny little lens in her hand.
Yeah, that is Patty, one of our team members, speaking with kids. I think it's always in Bolivia, yes. Yeah, one of our activity. So first of all, our name Galileo Mobile came from the fact that the original project was to travel on a van.
Okay.
By mobile. And this is what we have been doing during the first expedition. And the International Year of Astronomy was declared because 400 years before, Galileo observed for the first time the sky with a telescope. Right. And so we combined these two names and we got Galileo Mobile.
Cool.
And Galileo Scope, as maybe you already said, some previous hangouts. It's a telescope that was developed for the International Year of Astronomy, and yes, it's a basic tool for us, both because it's a telescope that we can easily give to schools, and you can take a Galileo scope.
Here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a easy tool to be carried and to leave to schools to play,
Right.
and also it's easy to be assembled and disassembled, so people can see what's in a basic telescope. It's in a refractor, so it's nothing magic, but it's couple lenses through which you can see the sky much better than with naked eyes.
Yeah,
And
so I've already taken one apart and put one together on air, so I'm not going to do it again. But yeah, there's no glue. It's all plastic. I mean, well, I think except for some of the tiny
and
lenses.
it's good that people, they're not scared, because when they take a Galileo scope and they can put it on together, mount it, they can see that they actually can touch things. They're not scared by telescopes.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's very friendly. Yeah.
Cool. What are the teacher workshops like? What kind of things do you go over with teachers?
Well, one of the things is to explain the activities that we propose, which are all contained in our handbook of activities. So these are activities that, so the big majority is not something that we invented, but it's something that we readjusted for our purpose. And so we invite them we explain them some activities. Say, the beginning, we try to understand what they want to know, what they know, and especially if they are motivated to participate. It's not obvious, because in some schools there are very motivated teachers. In some other schools, teachers are kind of forced sometimes to attend the teacher workshop, but we are not really aware of that. Sometimes we go there and then we realize that the boss of the school forced teachers to attend our workshop. So it can also happen. And yeah, like for instance, in a school, at some point after half an hour, there was a question by a teacher. I said, okay, but you are speaking about activities of astronomy, but how can I use these activities? I teach English. well, okay, every teacher is invited to participate, but of course, if you teach literature, it's not so obvious, the connection. Well, there is always a connection, but it's not so obvious. And this is one of the things that can happen with a project like ours. But in most of the cases, they are science teachers. They are motivated to use astronomy also, not only as like something that is funny, but also for their curriculum, and therefore they can sometimes use our activities for teaching something about, say, geometry, for instance, for teachers of maths, or also there are activities that are interesting for teachers of physics and of science in general. And we tend to communicate them this inquiry-based method of teaching. So just not being saying, okay, you have to learn this and this and this, but try to raise questions for kids.
Right. Have them raise questions, have them do the activities. I'm teaching a class right now that's inquiry-based, and it's thrown the students off a little bit, I realize, because it's like, let's do activity!
Yeah.
Experiment with velocity and acceleration and tell me how it works. And then afterwards, they're like, why don't we start with that? And I'm like, I don't want to give it all away at the beginning. Yeah, it's a different method than most of us are used to learning in school.
Yeah, totally different, yes.
Yeah.
School, it's most of the time quite classic in the sense that there is a teacher telling you what you need to know.
Right.
But this is not the best way to learn, I think.
Right. Yeah. It's like, we have the science to show you. It's not the best way to learn. We promise you. This will work out in the end. So then these teachers, I take it, are then hooked into it's part of the Galileo teacher training program. So now they're hooked into an international network of teachers as well.
Yeah, we tend to connect them with this international work of the teacher network, so they can feel also more motivated. And we give them some certificates after attending successfully the workshop. So they feel, again, motivation is a main factor.
Yeah. Do you have maybe a favorite experience, either with students or teachers, showing them some kind of activity?
A favorite in sense a day that was special or a favorite activity?
Like a day that was special, yeah.
Well, it's quite difficult to say. When I travel and go to these expeditions, I have to say that every day is special. I cannot really make uh, any choice. It's quite difficult. Maybe the most special day was at the very beginning, at the very first days of the first expedition, in this place in Bolivia. That place I felt quite magic atmosphere, and kids were really interested in learning and in hearing from us. But again, maybe it was just because it was the beginning. Otherwise, it's really every day it's unique and different from the previous.
Hmm. Cool. Um, and maybe a favorite activity. Do you have a favorite activity that you do?
Most of the time, I do this observation with the telescope,
Oh,
but
okay.
my favorite activity is this the Earth as peppercorn, because you also have to work. So you move. It's a kind of a little travel, say, a little journey through the solar system.
Hmm.
So if I have to pick up an activity, yes, it's that one.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. Scale models, the solar system. It even blows me away every time. When you set up a scale model solar system, it's like, yes, it's on the Earth and it's so far away from the sun. Yeah,
Yeah,
space, you
yeah,
guys. As several of our commenters, so Michael Jobin's been mentioning, outer space is really big, and none of us can do a good enough Douglas Adams impression, but we totally know where you're going. But also talking about, I guess back when we were talking about the age of the universe and how that can conflict sometimes, 13.8, 13.7 billion years old is the universe, and it's true that there is a larger extent. So it's a little off what we're talking about here, but the larger extent of the universe, which is a good astronomy cast topic. I should mention, so that they're back
yeah.
on. Yeah.
Totally. Well, yeah, this is
Yeah.
one of the strongest conflict we find. But for instance, we got in Uganda there was one professor who said, okay, maybe just for God, say 13.8 billion year is like a week. So yeah, because God
Right.
calculates time differently. So I mean, you can get out of these problems and using some tricks sometimes.
Right. 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 Yeah. So are there? So you mentioned that there is a documentary. So you guys already have that posted on the site. So I've put a link to Galileo-mobile.org in the showcase. So if you if you're looking at the Q&A app, you can click the little Rubik's Cube thingy up here, the little 9 squares. That'll take you to Showcase, which will take you to the Galileo mobile website. And they have you have your documentary up available for free on Vimeo. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic. And you said you have a second documentary on the way?
Yeah, it's done. We just have to decide the day of the release. It will be in this fall,
Okay.
and then there will be also a third documentary that is just been filmed in Brazil and Bolivia.
Okay.
But okay, I still have to work on that. But I think for next year we will have yet another documentary.
Awesome. Awesome. What are ways that people can follow what you guys are doing and maybe even help out?
Well, following, surely there is our blog,
Hmm.
our Facebook, and our Twitter, so social networks as usual. Help out. Well, the best way is to contact us. We are quite a big team, and our internal structure is a bit complicated because we are spread all around the world.
Yeah.
But it's likely that we will need help for next year activities because we have a big project coming up that consists in building up a network of schools in South America,
Hmm.
and so it's likely that we will need hands for help in this big project. So the best way is to contact us through Facebook or our email, and just introduce yourself and say
Excellent.
what you can contribute to the project.
Excellent, excellent, very cool. And I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned you just started a new postdoc in astrophysics. Did you mind telling us a little bit about what you do your work in?
So far I've been working on astrophysical magnetodynamics, so numerical simulations of magnetic fields in the universe, especially in the interstellar medium. Now I switch to something that is more related to with planets. So I will do study of related to exoplanets and also to the physics of ice. And so this is it's a kind of a double subject. One subject is to look for aurora emission signatures from exoplanets.
Okay.
And the other subject is to study the physics of ice to try to see if there is a way to model climate through the study of the ice, and so do climate models applicable hopefully to exoplanets. It's a 3 years. It's a 3 years project, and it started 1 week ago. So, so far I've been doing like just bureaucracy.
Yes. Just getting settled. Yeah, totally makes sense. Settled. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I want to do a few quick announcements for you guys watching. So we are back from DragonCon, which means our full host of Hangout shows are back, which means that Friday at noon, noon Pacific, which is 2 p.m. here, so that's 7 p.m. GMT, is the weekly space hangout. I think I got those times right. But check the CosmoQuest Google Plus page. They'll be putting the event there. The Weekly Space Hangout crew is back. Fraser Kane and a bunch of us who cover the astronomy beat will be talking about this week's space stories. And so you can join us for that. Virtual Star Parties on a monthly format. So it's usually the first Sunday of the month. We're past that one for this month. And Astronomy Cast is back. So Pamela Gay and Fraser Kane got started with Astronomy Cast last Monday while Pamela was in Portugal. She's still in Portugal for the European Planetary Sciences Conference. So we have Astronomy Cast back, we have Weekly Space Hangout back, and Learning Space. Next week we'll be talking about cool cosmos and irrelevant astronomy from the Spitzer Space Telescope program and how they do those really fun videos that star some of our favorite geeky stars, such as Felicia Day and Will Wheaton. So we will not be talking to Felicia Day and Will Wheaton, unfortunately, but we're going to be talking to Carolyn Brinkworth and Tim Pyle, who are awesome. And instrumental in getting these videos made. So that'll be our show next week. I think that's all I have for announcements. Go to galileo-mobile.org, Galileo Mobile on Twitter. I just searched Galileo Mobile on Facebook and liked it, so go check them out. And if you can support them in any way, that would be awesome. So, Fabio, do you have any last words of inspiration about Galileo Mobile?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me and the World Galileo Mobile to speak about our project.
Yeah.
Last word of inspiration, I think it's our motto, to be under the same sky, to feel connected to each other, and to try to live in a better world. Awesome. I totally want to go on a van trip around the world now and do astronomy. Come and join us.
All right. Thank you so much, Fabio, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been Learning Space. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.